Peterson, and I'm the founder of Content Basis, a tool. Oh man, it's not a tool. There we go. We're going to start over again.
Okay, just act like this one's live.
Yeah. Welcome to this first episode of Content in Commerce. My name is Brent Peterson, and I'm the founder of Content Basis. And I founded Content Basis because I believed AI-forward content would always work. Then I learned, and I met Isaac, and we came together. Isaac, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Isaac Morey. I co-founded Content Cucumber, which is a writing agency that existed long before AI was really competitive with human writers, and we've written blogs and email newsletters and web copy for all kinds of companies, including one of Brent's past ventures, but we won't get into that for now. Let's just talk about the story of how, essentially, as we grew and adapted to the AI age, we thought it would be good to team up with Content Basis and take our human-first writing approach and give it some data power and some efficiency with the help of AI. So now Brent and I are working together, and we're creating content with our human team of writers and with some AI tools. And that kind of leads us into today's topic, which is going to be the intersection of human creativity and AI power. And we're going to talk about what the pros and cons of each are and how they all fit together.
Yeah, so let's start with just augmenting what humans can do when you augment it with AI and how that can be beneficial as opposed to just doing AI on its own. So share your experience first, and then I'll kind of share my experience.
Right. Well, in a certain sense, it's always the two, at least so far, because we don't have, unlimited agentic AI or artificial general intelligence or anything like that yet. So, there's always a person behind the AI to some extent. But the question is to what extent and how much, creativity and knowledge and expertise is the person putting into the equation. Because one thing you can do, and that I've seen many companies and clients try to do, is just giving AI a really simple prompt like, hey, write me an article about dog food, and then posting it to your e-commerce pet store. And that doesn't go super well because it's not going to be very original content. It's not going to be very in-depth content. And also, a lot of people have worked with AI enough at this point that they can kind of recognize a low-effort chat prompt right off the bat, and it just kind of loses respect and attention of people. On the other hand, though, there's the possibility to have a much more involved and thoughtful use of AI, like, for example, putting your finished draft about your article on nutrition for your pets into ChatGPT and asking it what sections you might be missing, or even comparing it against maybe like your notes on the client's brand voice. And I think that's something you could maybe tell us a little bit about, Brent, because I know you're building a tool that plays right into that.
Yeah, before we get into that, I do want to talk about some misconceptions in the AI world. And it really has come from some of my talks now with marketing leaders who feel as though humans are completely dead in content, or the role of humans writing content is dead. And I just want you to speak to a little bit about how important it is for a human to still be involved in content creation, no matter what level, but certainly at ideation, at editing, and at publishing.
Right. So one element of that is the prompt itself, and really getting good input out of AI depends a lot on the input that you give it. Being a writer is still very helpful in terms of thinking about the clarity and the depth of what you're asking the AI to do. Once the output comes, back from the LLM, you can also prompt it like an editor to give you revisions. So you need to be, reviewing carefully what it's putting out and thinking critically about the flow of the information and the way it's presented, etc. And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, you also need to fact check and make sure that what the LLM is spitting out is accurate and like relevant. Because one thing that is kind of famous that an LLM can do is hallucinate and just confidently make stuff up if it doesn't know the answer or if it gets confused. And it can also, maybe because of a faulty prompt or just because of a kind of variance in what it's spitting out, it can give you information that's not 100% relevant to what you were actually looking for or to the context of what you're sharing. So I think in every step, like from the prompt that you put in to the maybe conversations and revisions that you're asking it to make to your review of the final product, having a human involved can be the difference between some like really low quality AI slop that has hallucinations, possibly even dangerous hallucinations in it, and a good output that actually relies on the LLM as a research tool and as a organizer for information, and you're still in the driver's seat as a creative in terms of what you're making. So yeah, I think start to finish, it's important to have a human involved and to have a human not just involved, but actively involved and managing and thinking about the process from start to finish.
I think another good way to look at it as well is that AI is a great tool to use, but it is an AI, and you can train it, but you do oftentimes run out of context. And also, if you're not paying for a private model, your trained AI could theoretically go away the next time the new version comes out, and you're going to have to retrain it, or your old version is going to be trained in the old version. So any time that those things change, and I believe they'll change less as we go into this more. Every time that changes, your tone and your voice changes along with the AI. And it was interesting. I had a call yesterday with a client who had said, hey, 9 out of 10 times it gives me exactly what I want, and then it gives me these things like, I've run out of context, you need to restart, and then my whole new journey is new. The whole thing is new because my journey has restarted. There's all kinds of things that get in your way. The other thing that I feel as that AI is really good at, it is the ultimate yes person. They want to please you so bad. Like, I think AI maybe started as a dog because it really just wants to be your best friend. And I have a great example of my wife who has been planning a trip on the West Highland Way and said we don't want any particular journey longer than 15 miles or something like that. But one of them has to be to complete it in the time. And instead of saying, well, okay, you have 7 days to complete this 100 miles and one of them is going to have to be longer, it just broke it up into even sections and didn't think, well, when I finish at 13 miles, what do I do with the other 4 miles out of the day? It didn't say, well, you have to get a taxi at this point in the trail to get to the end. It just gave us the mileage, even though the mileage was wrong. And so from without editing, first, if you were just auto-publish that, somebody's going to get the 7-day adventure of going on the West Highland Way, and maybe the things that you're doing in each of those segments sounds good, but the distance to get to the end is wrong because it wanted to be right or help you. It wanted to show you it can do it. So that's really where it becomes very important that a human is involved and is fact checking what it's giving you, because there's all kinds of little areas that it would say this is what you want or need, but it's completely wrong.
Right, and there's a couple issues at play there. One is definitely the yes man problem, and where it will just, it's always aiming to please and to roll with what you're saying and to affirm your ideas. Another one is that it doesn't always take into account the full context of like the universe in terms of what you're asking it for. So I've had the experience where I will try to, like, maybe I'm trying to learn a software tool and I'm asking ChatGPT how to do something, but it misunderstands the context of why I want to do that in the first place and ends up giving me instructions that are counterproductive to like the broader mission of sales or marketing or whatever. So one issue is like it's constantly affirming everything you say. Another is that it it doesn't understand necessarily the full context. And then another is that it's only going off of the input that you give it. So, if you're talking with a friend, for example, they might question the premises that you're giving them, or they might read your body language and see more, or like your facial expressions, and see more to the story than the exact words that you're giving it. Whereas with ChatGPT, if you tell it X, Y, and Z, it's going to kind of take that as gospel truth and build everything based on that, and kind of be overly narrow in the context of how it interprets those ideas. So I think all those things together, add up to where you definitely need to be putting oversight and critique and feedback and just critical thinking into everything that it spits out. And so when I see people aiming to replace an entire team with ChatGPT, or to complete a big project with one person and one LLM, I think there's serious limitations and roadblocks that they're going to run into. And the most dangerous part of that is that sometimes they don't see those, and it leads to these blind spots where, for example, someone could, like you said, publish a trip itinerary that leaves the travelers who take that article at face value stranded. So it's definitely very important to practice good editorial oversight of the things that you're publishing and writing.
Let's go into a little bit about what are some of the arguments for AI, and maybe I'll do the arguments for, and then let's do some arguments against.
Go ahead. So tell me why one person and one LLM is the model to work with.
All right, so I want to just as a little asterisk on this, I'm never going to propose that one person should run everything on one LLM, but that's a good. I'll take the position for. Oh, wait a second, Isaac, you're absolutely right. One person and one LLM can do everything in the entire world. How's that for a response?
Yeah, that's not just insightful; it's bold.
Yeah, that's all right. So. All right. To start out, you can train your LLM, right? I alluded to that earlier. You can create training files, and I have a tool that will inject your vectorized data, to use a synergetic word. It'll inject data into your stream before your prompt and give you that context, kind of like what Isaac was saying earlier. So you can train it and make your AI better. That helps it to have more context to what you're saying, and you can create specific agents. And I'm not going to lie, it's a great tool, and I have entrepreneurial friends who are using CRO agents and CFO agents and CTO agents to help them to run their companies. I will say though that you are the person, and Isaac had said this earlier, whatever you give it is what you're going to give back. And if you have no idea what you're doing, if you give it some garbage, you're going to get more garbage back. So you have to be very careful, and you need people that know what they're doing. And I would argue that when you're training it and when you're asking it to do something, you need to be even better at what you do or know to make sure you're getting something better out. So maybe you're training your LLM and you're going to get something good back out of it. But if you're giving it poor data, it's going to give you poorer data. Is that a word, Isaac? Poorer?
Yeah.
Not just the person that pours water into your glass at the restaurant?
That's one I'm not sure is a real word, actually. But yeah, I mean, I think to like build on what you're saying, I think it can easily kind of reflect your own misconceptions or biases back at you too. So like for the CFO example, you could come into it like as an optimist and feel like your financial numbers are all good. And then if you are feeding it information with that thought in your head, there's a very high likelihood that the way you present the information is going to cause it to reflect back at you like, oh, the numbers are great and, the finances are looking awesome. And that might not always be the case.
All right, so give me an argument against, and let's go back and forth, and I'll give you some more arguments for.
Okay, great. Well, I think, kind of what I just said is one good counter argument, which is when you have a team, you're going to get more diverse perspectives and you're going to get pushback on the things you say in a way that working autonomously with an AI is just not necessarily going to offer the same level of like um, pushback on what you say.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I do have some prompts that I use that ask for constructive criticism of the content that I'm giving it. But I will say that there is a trail that you can go down with your AI, and I asked it to build a list, and then my client asked to can you give me some more things on that list, and it will give you an endless amount of items for a list. It'll never ever stop. It'll always come up with something new. So it can go out of control, let's say, without the intervention of a human, which kind of goes into that autonomous mode where it'll just do stuff until it thinks it's done without any output of does a human really want to read this? And I think that's a really good point that as against, not to take one of your against things, but does a human really want to read something that it wrote? And I'm a big believer, and now I'm back on the wrong side of the road, but I'm a big believer that there is going to be 90% of this content in the world that's created by AI and 10% that's created by humans, and the other 5% is created by AI and humans. And that top 15%, and the math is wrong because I'm AI, that top 15% is the stuff that anybody's going to want to read, because the other stuff is just vanilla garbage that has been like all lumped into a big huge paint bucket, and it came out gray, and nobody actually wants to see it because everybody knows and can hear that one voice that it's spitting out. It's the AI voice.
Right. And I think another big benefit of creating your own original content is that you can play an outsized role in training AI models in the future, because there's this whole theory of model collapse, which is basically like that the internet is going to become so chock full of AI output that AIs are going to be training on their own output, and it's going to be like a copy of a copy of a copy and cause the quality to degrade. Now, I think these are some like enormously wealthy and smart companies, so I think they can find ways around that. But there is the fact that they're looking for unique training data, and the people who are putting their own information, like I said, if 90% of what's on the web is regurgitated ChatGPT with very little human input, and the 10 that is original content like shines as having more information and more unique information, then that's gonna that will be more influential in terms of what LLMs know and think and talk about in the future. So to give a concrete example of that, like if you have a software and you're writing about the specifics of what your software does, then you can hope that future models of LLMs will be able to talk about your software fluently. Whereas if you're just regurgitating like general information about your category of software from other articles or from ChatGPT, then you're not really going to be influencing the training data in a way that adds unique information and gives, say, OpenAI the ability to talk about you in the future. So even as these LLMs are growing and taking over a portion of like Google search and other engines like that, even though there's less search share, there's still just as much internet traffic. It's just coming in different formats, and it still ultimately relies on human-generated content. So it's like an incentive to really create things that are unique and that are thoughtful.
Yeah, I have two more points that I want to argue for, and then I have some thoughts after you give me your counter on it that we could make this more interactive in the future. But the first one is that you can actually use AI to handle all types of things, and I use it for programming, for content, for video, for images, and I think the big winner is data. and being able to analyze and find patterns in data. And I want to just take away that idea that it's going to be right about doing number crunching. I don't think AI right now is in a place where the general models aren't in a place that do great specific number crunching, because we do see a lot of mists, a lot of errors in that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel like it does find patterns in things, and it's a great. I have Gemini in my email, and I asked it to. Somebody sent me this long, like 7-page email, and I said, "Can you just tell me what they said? Because I don't have time to read this entire email." And it told me exactly what I wanted to know in like five bullet points, and then I could say yes and respond. So some people are very verbose in their writing, and in addition, AI can be very verbose in its writing. So people are going to start giving us verbose emails that we're going to have to use AI to summarize so we can respond and say yes or no to something. And then the last thing is, it does work autonomously. And I'll go back to the programming model, like Claude Code will work autonomously. But if you don't know what you're doing and you're not really a programmer, you're just going to make this mess of a thing that may work, but if it breaks, you're going to have a really hard time trying to fix it because you don't know what you're doing. And that autonomousness without any direction will go the wrong way. And a great example is if you're on an airline and you're 3% off course, at some point you're going to go all the way off course. If you keep continuing around the world, you'll end up completely different than where you should be. So even 1 or 2% off course is too much. You need to be on course, on target every time.
Yeah, your point about sifting through the long emails makes me think of another use of AI that I think is very powerful and like useful, which is this RAG, retrieval automated generation, or retrieval augmented generation, I should say. And that's where, like, if you have a whole database and you need to sift through this and get answers, they can program LLMs to sift through that and provide you with conversational answers to the specific questions that you have. And I think that kind of plays to the whole notion that AI is a great tool and a great analysis partner and a great helper, but you can't rely on it to do 100% of the creative work all on its own.
Yeah, so Isaac, I think we should end it there. I'd like to make a plug for some of the new tools we're working on at Content Basis and Content Cucumber, and Content Cucumber and Basis are together, and I think we're looking for a unique name like sauerkraut, which didn't sound quite right, or Cucumber Basis. We don't have to brainstorm those because ChatGPT will do a better job on that part. But one of the things that we're working on is a tool where you as a client can put into a private database, not an LLM, but we'll use that to help us better understand you as a client going ahead in the future. So just like if you were to put a whole bunch of books in a library and you want to know kind of what that library is about, we'll have a better understanding of you as a client because we're vectorizing some of that data to better understand how your brand, your voice sounds. And even as then human writers are writing, they'll be better at what they're doing.
Awesome. Well, I think we're all excited for these tools to hit the public, and we're doing our first beta runs this week. So those will be out maybe even before this video.
All right, my name is Brent Peterson, and I am with Content Basis and Content Cucumber, and Isaac Morey is with Content Basis and Content Cucumber, and we are bringing you content in commerce every other week.
Thanks for checking this out, everyone. We'll probably be live next time, so check out the captions here for some more info, and we look forward to seeing you.